a young man, a young entrepreneur, a devoted Christian, a married man, and I have passion for entrepreneurship. I have that vision that young people can make it. And I also believe that one of the ways we can make impact is to help other people. That is what I can say about myself. I'm not always looking at the money, but I always want to make sure I make an impact.
Please, is this your first book?
No, so this is my third book, but I've also written a couple of articles, the Daily Graphic, Christian Messenger, and also in international journals. So it's that teacher. Okay, so I think my first book was in 2009 when I was in Tech University. I wrote on faith. Where is your faith? We have displayed it behind. You can look at it. Let me just see the background to why I write. I just write not because I want to, but anytime I'm pushed with a challenge and I want to share my testimony, I put it in writing so that it becomes a record, something I can always refer to. That what made me write it? Then I'm mature book. So that is one of the things that pushes me to write. When I'm faced with something like a challenge or anything, experiences, I will try to write it down and then make it a novel.
What inspired you to write it? I didn't show you and say this particular book, the money cycle theory. You put it to write it.
Okay, so the money cycle theory is literally out of a personal experience. I've had problems with money. I think a number of times, and now I'm here because as an entrepreneur, you shouldn't have that challenge. But I needed to understand why I had to go through that process and why I don't need others or young people coming up to go through that same process. Because Sikai Muja, like they always say, and if one tears here, the amount 1 million and a crowd, it can finish in a week or a day. So it's more of a personal experience. I have gone through a couple of money problems, and I wanted everybody to have a share of that piece. And also, I know a lot of people have that same problem. You see council, it's then away, and that is why I decided to write this book.
But why the money cycle theory?
Theory. Obia betinya in theory. People can see there are 10 cycles with money, but I wrote it out of personal experience, saw it as my own theory, and that is the reason why I use the word theory. And the other reason is that anything that is theoretical, it means that ubetimi esua, ubetimi master, and ubetimi yeyi. So that is why the word theory. Money is sika, but we all need to know say sika in a about the same buy. How can we use it to better our lives? And then the cycle is that sika moves in a cycle. And how does it move? You need to know where it's starting from, where it's ending, and then how it also starts all over again. So that is basically the title. All right. I want a theory that ubia bitinya kai shua na wa master. No, so it's me. And because it's my theory, that's why I decided to call it the money cycle theory.
Okay. Now, Mr. Bisaro, and now how long did it take you to research about this theory, this cycle, and how long did it take the theory?
Okay. So how long? I think this title I had it for almost 8 years. Let that shelf me so. because my wife always tells me that bookie, they also mention here. You know, writing is not an easy. You need to be pushed to write. So it's been on the shelf for like 8 years. I had developed the titles, the headings, but how to put it into context was not coming. But as the problems came, then I was being pushed to developing. I think Niema meeting me Sean quickly was when I was away 2 years ago. I had some free time, so I was using almost every Friday to develop a chapter. So I can say that in 2 years I was able to do it. But even though the title was there for 8 years, yes. So, and most importantly, this year I really needed to push because they kind of made way through Nama Signer. For example, it's like you go back and forth. When you read it, it's like so it's more or less some years, but more importantly, this year I really dedicated a lot of time to writing it.
But you mentioned faith as your first book, and then this book too, you hint on faith. What's the correlation between faith and money?
Okay, so James 2:26 talks about, so as the body without the spirit is dead, faith without works is dead. So the whole principle with money is a mindset thing. And I would share an example, maybe with something I encountered recently. Name Cotton products we were school. Alright, and the feedback I got was, oh, I had here 2 CD near man one and Tom, only I did buy boy and Tom. I was like, me product, me yogurt. Okay, so you all know my yogurt. This yogurt needs me turn into 2 CDs. Come on. So I said I'll start with 2 CDs, 50 pesos. And when I started, people came to buy. I was like, then let me do 5 CD bottles and see. The students came to buy. Let me do 12 CDs. The students came to buy. So I realized that it is about mindset. And that is how faith is. You need to renew your mind. You know, before you can profess your faith, you need to know how your mindset is. And Romans has said it a lot of times, transforming our minds. And see, for me, you need faith, but faith with works. And that is how this whole money will come to you. You need to understand that you need to start processing it in the mind and now see how you apply the faith to be able to accomplish it. And see, that is one thing I can see regarding that question.
Okay. Talking about money, what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes the youth of today commit as far as money is concerned?
Well, I think that a lot of us, we spend without planning. And the other thing will be debts. Because I've been through it, so I know what it means to be in debt. Yesterday I was telling my wife, we had a little agreement. I was telling her, what's the ABC? I didn't hear good draft. Meanwhile, I've taken exactly what we see here. So, if we don't plan, we spend. We overspend. To you, say it's needed, but you didn't plan to buy that thing, and it becomes a deficit to your account. The jargons we hear from the finance deficit is because we didn't plan it, and it became an unnecessary expenditure. So we all need to plan before we spend our money. And if we do that, we have that resource that we want to see. And also with debts, I think managing. I'm not saying don't borrow, but we need to manage our debts. Yeah.
Okay. But so we have one here meeting. how should I go about my money?
This is a good question because we have old people here. I'm still young though. Let me issue this disclaimer. I'm not talking because I'm a financial expert or I know all about money. But the little I know is what I want to share. And as I have developed a framework in this book I call the SIDE model. And I developed this framework because I feel it is something which is practical and very, very, very system no and the only advice I can give to young people is get the book, put into practice the SIDE model. Okay, because one thing I always see is that people have this jargon, we save to spend. It is not true. Have a SIDE while there, understand why of the book, understand the SIDE model, know how to manage that money, and I think you will be successful.
You mentioned seminars. Is there a plan to hold seminars, financial seminars in the near future?
Well, I've thought about it because, like you did say, this book is very, very practical. If you don't need a seminar, if you really understand it, but there's this chapter that people probably need help or assistance. I call how to develop your own money cycle map. And probably that is an aspect I would want to talk more on, so that people can really understand how to be able to know how to develop their own money cycle app. So yes, we can have some workshops and discuss that chapter and see how best it will help us. Yeah.
In the book, you mentioned some global entrepreneurs. Is there one that's particularly impacted your thinking the most?
Yes, I think I've always had a soft spot for this man, Branson, what's his name? And Dangote, because the people I listed in the book, I tried to pick each from the continents. I didn't want it to look like Abrofo Africans, people are also making it. And I just liked his Richard Branson, that's his name. Actually like his methodology and how he started his business. I have listened to him so many times, read a lot about his articles. All right, so Richard Branson and Aliko Dangote, they are people I recommend. Google, read about them, see how they have been successful with their business, and
what is the next big financial trend that you foresee and you advise readers or listeners here to take notice of?
Okay, so I think the next financial trend that we are all seeing it's what we call the digital assets economy. People call it cryptocurrency, but there's another aspect we call the automations. All right, a lot of people are going into the automations industry, and now we all have ChatGPT on our phones. By just a click, it helps you, give you whatever you want. So let us all gather knowledge about this financial assets. I have written a little bit about it in the book. Just read more about what's happening with that digital asset economy, and it would also help you. Also read more about automations. We are entering into a system where course for university. You need to really know that career path, else you find yourself completing 4 years and your knowledge will not be needed, because you move towards AI automations. So that is another thing I think I would recommend people to look at.
All right. Let me add this last question, and then you can have your final words. Let's say I have some cash on me, some money, amounts of money on me, and I want to reinvest and then scale up. What would be your advice? What can I go into? What principles should I follow? And how can I reinvest and then scale up the amounts of money I have? Then from there, you can add your final words, and then you can call the session down.
Okay, reinvesting and scaling. It's an aspect in the book. I won't talk too much about it, but it will help you to understand when to reinvest and why you need to scale. The American is that everybody wants to grow, and growth comes with reinvestment. When I started Prepare Consult, I never saw the need for websites and digital accounts, receipts and all that. But if you have that vision that you don't want to stay wherever you are, you need to reinvest whatever profits you have into other aspects of the business. And that is how the business grows. Let me just share this example. I was there one day, a friend of mine called me, was like, Eben, your name is on Google. I was like, really? I was, hey, sir. So quickly, they bought me on Google just to see what Google has to say about it. And it was so interesting to know that I was there. So, Madam for now, cashier, I didn't see anything about him on Google. I was like, wow. So whatever you are doing, you need to reinvest so that you expand and grow. It's the same PBR. When you are growing, maybe will hire say and the same principle applies with scaling. All right. When I started my poultry industry, I started with 200 beds. Then you want to add, and then add, and then add. So you don't want to stay at wherever you are. If you want to do that, then it means that you don't have any vision. So let's just understand the principles of reinvesting and scaling, and everything is in the book. So I recommend you get a copy.
Thank you. Final words.
Okay, so my final words is I don't know if I have to say this, but let me just put it out there. So what I taught with this book is that I want to set aside every 10 Ghana cedis of a purchase of this book for a youth entrepreneurship fund. I don't know whether it will be for POP, but it's something that God pushed me to do, that I need to set some money aside for young people who want to go into that field of entrepreneurship. So I encourage everyone to get a copy. Buy one for somebody, buy some for friends, buy some for your workers. The more you buy, the more you donate that 10 Ghana cedis into the fund. And yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much.